Welcome to this episode of Lemongrass Roots. I'm Eamonn O'Neill, CTO of Lemongrass, and today I'm joined by Kevin Grayling, CIO of Florida Crystals, a major sugarcane producer and manufacturer. And today we'll be discussing how Florida Crystals has built a nice, clean IT architecture with their BTP, SAP BTP in the center of that, and how they position themselves for future innovation using SAP BTP as one of those elements. So welcome, Kevin. Would you like to introduce yourself a little first?
Thanks, Eamon. I'm Kevin Grayling. I am the CIO of Florida Crystals. We're a large vertically integrated sugarcane and refining company. We grow sugarcane in Florida. We refine it around the world, and we also have some consumer packaged goods brands for sugar, Domino and C&H in the US, Tate & Lyle and Siddle in Europe, amongst others. Great to be here.
So I think everybody's come across Florida Crystals in one shape or other, I suppose, over the years. I certainly remember Tate & Lyle very well from the UK. So let's kick off a little bit about yourself, Kevin, if you don't mind. Obviously, you've been in the SAP world for quite a while. We've talked about it in the past. So do you want to give the listeners a quick intro to your background?
Yeah, sure. I'm actually passing my 30th year in the IT industry this year. I started out many years ago in the UK in the insurance business as an IT business process owner, really, and variety of roles in internal infrastructure management, then IT outsourcing management, and then moved to the US in 2003. Continued to work in the infrastructure space, and then in 2009, I took on Kraft Foods' major SAP programs and deployed SAP around the world in all sorts of locations, and had a lot of fun. And then regional CIO for Mondelez, as Kraft Foods and Mondelez split into two companies in 2012, and then joined Florida Crystals as CIO back in 2017.
So you've seen some very big SAP landscapes in your time then.
Yeah, one or two. I think I was calculating it the other day, and I think I've been responsible for more than 20 major SAP go lives in the last 20 years. So yeah, I think if you do something enough, you kind of think you get good at it. So that's my selling point.
Cool. Well, let's talk a little bit about where you are now. And I mean, one of the things that I love when I talk to you and your team is your approach to enterprise architecture and what you've done, maybe because of that complex background that you've seen and some of the lessons. But talk to us a little bit about the overall approach to enterprise architecture in Florida Crystals and this ability to keep things manageable and simple.
Yeah, I think a little history lesson first. We've been an SAP customer for nearly 30 years. The leaders of the company back in, I think, 1993 or 4 decided that they wanted to implement SAP because they were going to grow as a business, and they wanted to make sure they had a platform that was running their business resources to grow with. And over time, the company kept its IT strategy pretty simple. It was pretty much, if it's SAP, we have it, and didn't buy or build a lot of internally developed applications. And so when I arrived in 2017, I inherited a real gift, actually. Very simple SAP landscape, no non-SAP applications. And, for a company that is $4 to $5 billion with 8,000 employees operating in 6-7 countries, that was unique to me in my experience, at least. So, and it was, I must say, also a little bit intimidating. We had a great relationship with SAP. We were innovating a lot of SAP's new products. We were the first company in the world to go to HANA, first company in the world to go to S4, et cetera, et cetera. So what do we do next? And it was also clear to me that I didn't think that certain choices on business process automation should be SAP. So before we decided to go down a road of best of breed in some areas, I wanted to make sure that we had and kept a very clean enterprise architecture. So first part of the answer, Eamonn, is I inherited a very simple architecture. Second part of the answer is, as we did things more complicated, like connecting SAP with non-SAP applications and choosing some non-SAP applications, make sure that our enterprise architecture standards maintain that simplicity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I've noticed that not only does that help you bring in new solutions as you need them, it also helps you get rid of solutions that you don't need more even as well.
Yeah. A lot of the companies I've worked with before have a very complex application portfolio, several hundred applications, the smallest of which is often SAP or other ERP platforms, and hundreds of internally developed or externally developed applications. By design, we have more than 90% of our applications that we have are software as a service. We don't need to do everything significantly better than our competitors. We need to do some things much better than them, but we don't need to be better at HR or better at finance or better at even some supply chain processes. We just need to do them well. And so we believe we can do them using relatively standard features and capabilities in software as a service platforms. And we have.
Mm-hmm.
So that means that if you look at it from a desktop point of view or a laptop point of view, everyone is interacting with enterprise data and processes through their browser. There's not really many, if any, client applications that sit on the desktop. So that's the sort of the simple part of it. What that means is that when we add a new application, it's software as a service. It's easy to put in. You don't spend a lot of time in the software development lifecycle. You put your data in it, you configure it, you go. What that also means, as you say, is that when you're done with that one, you can turn it off. Obviously, you need to do something with your data. You might need to find a replacement for it, but you're not doing lots of server retirements. You're not doing application retirements in general. You're just turning it off. And we have examples of that within our financial planning and analysis. We decided that the platform that we're on right now is not the one we want to be on, and we're turning it off, and we're replacing it with, in this case, an SAP financial planning and analysis application.
Mm-hmm. So the cost of change becomes smaller with a more standardized, simpler architecture approach.
Absolutely. It's not quite as simple as turning it off, like I say. Obviously, a lot of the information you create as a company has statutory or regulatory conditions to it. But it's certainly much, much easier than having to retire a client server application or even an application that you've built and you've put in a public cloud. Mm-hmm. I think that one of the things that we set in our strategy in 2018 was why software as a service? Well, if you don't put all that energy into the software development lifecycle, requirements gathering, put a project proposal together, get the project approved, design the capabilities, build them, test them, implement, and enhance once you're in production. If you just use what's already in there with your data and some minor customization, you can take all that energy that you would have put into that project, and you can put it into adoption, so that you're using 90% of the features that you've put in rather than, and I'm making this statistic up because I can, less than 50%, right? So we do put a lot of energy into making sure that we adopt the things that we put in. And we're just going through this at the moment, when we think that something isn't generating the value it should be, we can exit from it relatively quickly too.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I mean, I've seen it myself in the past where people who don't have that capability, and I remember one CIO talking about the landscape was like a pot of pasta, of spaghetti, and every time he tried to move one strand of spaghetti, something else would move, and his job was to try and reduce the amount of spaghetti in the pot. And he felt that that was a big priority for him, was to simplify things so people could respond to business needs more quickly. I mean,
Yeah.
and that brings us to BTP. I mean, obviously, for people who don't know, SAP's business technology platform is a PaaS with a bunch of capabilities. This is a product, and it's many iterations over the last few years that you've been involved with. You're very knowledgeable about with your relationship with SAP, of course. Maybe talk to us a little bit about when you started with your BTP journey, and again maybe some of the work you've been doing personally with SAP on that.
We started using CPI first, before really that we saw this identity coming out of SAP called BTP. We've had a very, very close relationship with SAP, which means that we get a first front row seat to some of the new initiatives or products that they're coming out with. And what really appealed to us about CPI, which later became Integration Suite within BTP, was that as we were starting to do more SAP to non-SAP integration, but also SAP to SAP, it was a very simple, cost-effective, easy to deploy, easy to change integration architecture. So we bet on that. And over the last 4 or 5 years, we now have, or about to soon have, all of our integration, whether it's application to application or customer EDI, supplier EDI, all in Integration Suite, run at an exceptionally low price, on a platform that has a lot of supportability with partners out there. We don't do the support internally ourselves, and we can pick from a mixture of partners. So that was our first foray into BTP before it really was branded as BTP and ultimately changed from CPI to Integration Suite. We were invited to join the BTP Executive Council a couple of years ago. At the time, Jürgen Müller, the CTO, put a group of people together, some really big energy companies, some big CPG companies. And it's been amazing to see how those companies have been using BTP. I would say our usage right now is heavy on Integration Suite, getting very heavy on data analytics with Data Sphere and data intelligence. And we're really experimenting and trialing some areas within advanced automation and not really in AI yet, but the advanced automation and other areas touches a little bit in process optimization. I don't think we don't build applications ourselves. As I said, we're software as a service primarily. I don't think we're ever going to build a major application on BTP, but in the executive council, I listen to companies that are and do, and that's a platform of development of choice for them. And these are big applications that they're building, and these are big companies that are building them. So all the experts, and I'm not a development expert, I speak to believe it's a very agile, easy to use development platform.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And we're seeing, the same sort of adoption journey with other customers. Integration is always a great way to start because it, as you say, it's a pretty fully featured integration tool now, Integration Suite. Of course, DataSphere was a big jump in capability when it came out recently. And I think that's starting to open people's minds to what else, BTP can be used for. But there's always that opportunity to extend and build and create custom applications, all within the security controls, all within the data controls, UI standards, development standards of one PaaS, which I think is going to over time attract more and more people to it. And
I think so.
In terms of your so your integration journey is well complete, and as you say, you're happy with the performance and the cost as well. You
Absolutely,
mentioned.
yeah. I mean, I'm getting a bit dangerous and beyond what I really truly understand now. But when you look at how reliable and how easy to deploy it's been, it's also becoming a very capable platform too, with event mesh and other capabilities that are in there. So the ability to use Integration Suite to automate more, not just to connect data sources together, but to automate more, or to generate actions from the things that are occurring, is also quite exciting to us. We recently use Aviva Wonderware to monitor all our manufacturing execution systems and PLC systems. So really, Wonderware or Aviva is I don't like the phrase, but I'll use it, the single pane of glass that we have to look at how our business is making and refining sugar. And so that generates a lot of data about how we're performing. It generates a lot of machine data to how parts of the refining process are performing. And we're using BTP now through data intelligence, but also with some code to connect to the relevant data in SAP. So, for example, we use centrifuges in our refining process to spin the crystallized sugar out and get the liquid out. And obviously, there's many of them, and they operate at high speeds and temperatures. When those machines are starting to say, the machine data is saying there's a frequency issue or vibration issue or a heat issue, we can now connect that, and that was what Wonderware was capturing in its historian. We can now connect that to the relevant SAP side of the house, which is generate a plant maintenance work order to have someone come and come and see this machine before it fails. So that condition-based monitoring and that count-based monitoring, we can now automate into the other side of that coin, which is how we maintain and fix that equipment when it's about to break rather than when it's broken. We couldn't have done that before, and we certainly couldn't have done it easily and in a disposable way. Our SaaS strategy makes a lot of our application portfolio disposable. I'm not sure the price is always disposable, but certainly we can dispose of it, right? It's not a big pen cost, but it's certainly disposable. Whatever we build in data intelligence and any applications we build in BTP as well are disposable, because it didn't take much to build them in the first place. It doesn't take much to support them. And then when you don't need it anymore, you just throw it away. So, and as an organization with a strategy of not bringing a lot of internal development capability in-house, the challenge for us is finding the right partners to help us build the BTP code at any kind of scale that we need. Right now, it's very doable because we have small needs, but if we were building multiple apps at the same time, we'd need a partner. And I think that's the area of maturity that BTP needs to focus on, is how the ecosystem of partners can support the BTP platform as a development platform, not just an integration or data analytics platform.
I think that's a great point. I mean, it's something that I think in some ways it's a bit of a new thing for the SAP ecosystem, as you say. We're all familiar with PO, we're all familiar with BW, and of course we're all familiar with ABAP, but ABAP as an embedded piece of coding was always, dare I say it, you want to limit the amount of custom code you built, you wanted to limit the amount of changes you're making, and sometimes leave it to other teams to look after the type of integration you just mentioned. Whereas BTP seems to be changing that, and as you say, opening opportunities to do more.
I think there's a watch out though, Eamonn, though, which is don't just rebuild your, I use the English acceptable phrase, rubbish. Don't rebuild your ABAP rubbish on BTP. Because while it might be more disposable and you'll have a cleaner core, it's still technical debt. So however much easier it is to build the customization in BTP rather than ABAP, I think there's still a tough question you've got to ask yourself, is what's cheaper than rebuilding it in BTP is not building it at all.
Yeah.
Is cleaning the core out and keeping the standard upgrade safe code as much as you can. It's certainly easier for us to do that than maybe other companies, because I think our business model is pretty simple. And And while we have customizations in SAP, we do, as you can tell from our software as a service strategy, we are able to use standard features more often than not. And I appreciate that for many of your customers, that is not necessarily an easy task.
Well, for sure, yeah. I mean, and then you've seen it yourself, of course, in previous jobs too. I think, it brings us to clean core as a topic. Obviously, you're very clean as you stand today, but you still want to get all the way to fully clean. What's your strategy with, as you mentioned, Z code or Z code that's already in your S4 system? Are you planning to back it out? Do you plan to refactor some of it? I mean, well, what's your approach and what sort of timeline are you thinking of in terms of taking the challenge on?
We were one of the first companies, if not the first, to put SAP in the cloud back in 2009. And we've had it run by Lemongrass in AWS for the last 3-4 years. And we are about to put it in SAP Rise later this year. So for the last 4 or 5 years, we've been focusing on consolidation. We had 2 or 3 smaller SAP systems back then, which you helped us consolidate. And really much more focused on true business transformation in peripheral areas of core ERP, whether it's supply chain, trade promotion management, financial planning and analysis, et cetera, et cetera. So now, as we finish Rise later this year, we'll be focusing more on cleaning the core. We did an analysis back in 2021 before we moved it to AWS. We are 100% standard in certain areas like plant maintenance. But when you go all the way to order to cash, which is usually the area that you have a lot of SAP customizations, we're about 70% standard. And that order to cash processes, or those order to cash processes, are built for a company that existed for us 10 years ago or 15 years ago, not necessarily built for the company that exists today that needs a little bit more case. The typical unit of measure issue with SAP, it's cases of sugar rather than tons of sugar in rail cars. We still do that, obviously, but the percentages have shifted. So I think that's probably our first step, is to start to clean the core of customizations in areas like order to cash, which have been highly customized. 30%, I would say, is highly customized, and will give us problems. Now that we're on the SAP Rise journey, give us problems when we need to upgrade S/4HANA every 2 or 3 years, as you would typically do in Rise versus an on-prem solution. So that's the first thing. I think also we're using an on-prem version of EWM, which has a lot of customized warehouse management code that for some reason we put in EWM rather than using the EWM standards. So I would consider that part of the clean core journey too, going back to standards in EWM warehouse management and cleaning that up and using EWM technology processes as standard rather than customized ones. Those, I think, are the 2 priorities, and I would expect to do both of those things during 2026 and 2027. And then I think we still use SAP GUI in many areas. We haven't, even though we're on S/4HANA 2020 and we're moving to 2023 later this year, you have a choice whether you change the user interface, and we've decided not to change that user interface in certain areas. So I think also part of that clean core for me is, if you're going to go use the standard processes and have any customizations you have either there or in BTP, you should probably also try and put the user interface into a 21st century version rather than a 20th century version. Trouble with that is there's a lot of people that love SAP GUI because they've learned how to use it and it's fast. They can click and get stuff done, and then you give them a Fiori interface and they don't know what to do. So we have to do that fairly carefully. But those, I think, will be the 3 areas: order to cash, warehouse management, and a better user interface.
That's really interesting. And I guess everybody's going to have to go through the same journey of trying to prioritize, what's going to have the most value, the biggest impact, and what clears the way, as you say, for cheaper and easier upgrades in the future, to take advantage of the innovation that SAP's building.
That's a good point, because at Craft and Mondelez, the whole time I was there for 12 years, we were on ECC 6. And for several years before that, because I deployed most of it, we were on ECC 6 or 5. And you were not forced to upgrade anything because you didn't really need to. Now, you want to upgrade more frequently with that, even in S4, because you want to get to the new capabilities. S4 HANA 1709, which we were on in 2021, is very different to 2020 that we're on now, which is very different to 2023. So you want to access those capabilities. The price of an upgrade has dropped dramatically because of cloud technologies, for one, because of process automation, like we've done with you at Lemongrass, for two. But also, I think SAP has just got better at making sure the versions that you are moving from and to have less dramatic change in them. It's more incremental change. But obviously, you need to get to them if you want to get to any AI capabilities. Obviously, the story is you have to be in RISE to do that. We'll see if that sticks. But certainly, if you want the AI capabilities, you have to get to a more modern version of S4. So it's all, if you've got a cleaner core, the speed of major SAP upgrades you could do one a year if you wanted to. If you've got a messy core, you're probably not going to have the time to do them once a year or even 2 or 3 years. And it's certainly going to cost you significantly more to do.
No, absolutely. And I think that's exactly where this all starts to converge. The BTP capabilities supporting Clean Core, which supports faster innovation. So, all around it's not just what SAP want, it's what customers want. Everybody wants faster innovation and faster access to that innovation. Well, Kevin, listen, it's been a real pleasure, as always, to catch up with you, and certainly on this topic. I think you guys are a shining light on adoption and how to do it. If anyone listening would like to follow up with Kevin or I, feel free to reach out. I'm sure Kevin would be happy to tell you his story in more detail. But I'd like to thank you for your time, and we can wrap it up here. And I'm sure I'll see you in West Palm Beach at some point, Kevin.
Sure. Always a pleasure, Eamonn. Thank you.
Thank you.